Hi, I'm Jorge Carrillo. I'm going to present the 4 stages of lean production in Mexico. This paper has been written with Reddy Gomez. We are researchers at COLEF in Tijuana, Mexico. And the book appeared last year, so I really recommend to go to the book and go to the chapters. And in the case of Mexico, I will present in a few moments. And is related with the labor debate, not necessarily the issues of technical competitive of the lean techniques, but the labor debate. And I highlight 2 analytical perspectives in the case of Mexico, and then we will review some definition of lean production, 3 approaches in order to understand the results and conclusions. So let me start to mention that the global debate is kind of different with Mexico. Because the global debate mainly is based on the if the lean production techniques and the whole practices bring more improvements in labor, or on the contrary, more precariousness. So in Mexico, more than that, is the discussion was focused on the scope of the diffusion of lean production. So I highlight two main perspectives from the Mexico and the case, the evolution and the hybridization. So the evolution of companies' perspective is based on the technology organization, all the practices that happen in the companies, especially in the export manufacture, and the impacts in labor transformations in the labor process. So in this perspective, we have an evolutionary timeline, and from assembly in Mexico to made in Mexico or manufacture in Mexico to create in Mexico to coordinate in Mexico. And these different stages, obviously at the end, they are mixed and they happen, they coexist, even though some of them have some predominance than others. But the interesting thing is the techniques for being competitive during the first stage in the assembly was mainly on manual work and a lot of supervision from quality supervision at the end of the lines. So since 1983, when the openness of the economy started, until 94, well, and following, but until 94, when the NAFTA start in Mexico and US and Canada, most of the companies has implement for management and for the labor process, the lean. So it was a really rationalized of work with a lot of, the quality circles, teamwork, control, statistic process, etc., etc. And then in the middle of the 90s, started the R&D centers, and this was mainly by engineers, and then we have the creative work, and in this case also the lean was important, but was the lean for the projects, because it was different. It was not just the manufacturer, but the lean projects. And then the final stage is the coordinated in Mexico, which is a kind of mini powering company located in Mexico. Then from Mexico, you can organize the supply chains and some services. So more and more professionals work in the material work type. So, as I mentioned, the lean happened especially since the early 80s until now, and it was changed the process of work. So the hybrid factory perspective, this is another academic academic perspective that comes from the Japanese people, and these people make a very strong research and analyze globally more than 500 manufactured plants around the world, and they apply the same model also for Mexico, the application adaptation model. And according with these results, the most important is that the lean production is based on this firm strategy, but at the same time, depending on the national regional context. And this is a very important results from a global study. And the items were implemented is not only which practices or which techniques are implemented, but more than that is how they are introduced, bringing in or learning from the local context, or and at what level is the implementation. So we, after 35 years of implementation in Mexico, we can say that it's widely spread in many sectors, not just in the export, not just in maquiladoras, also, of course, in the OEMs, the automotive, in the auto parts, in aerospace, in many sectors. The same in different companies and regions, not just the northern part of Mexico, the central part, but also in the southeast part of Mexico. Moreover, adapting to different levels of production, change, clusters, and institutional networks. I mean, is the diffusion of this lean production goes beyond the companies, beyond the plants, the manufacturing plants. However, as I mentioned before, the way of entry, more complete or more partial, and the level of diffusion of each practices varies considerably, because in the first was adopting transitional gradually, but then with the maquila, we can say that, I mean, after, I don't know, 10 to 15 years was implemented fully. And for domestic market firms was also implemented this lean production, but not peacefully, because the trade unions were have a more presence and more actives in some parts, especially in the autos. So it was some special troubles. There are many studies, but at least 3 of them based on official data and based on large surveys from De La Garza, Domingo Sabran, and myself with Gomez. We can say safely that a small proportion of companies use comprehensively the lean production, between 20 to 30% of the manufacturing companies in Mexico. So the very interesting and critical debate was, okay, we are clear that is not the 100%, is not the majority, but it's not only one case or few cases. It's 20, 30% in the whole manufacturer companies in Mexico. So what's the meaning of that percentage? Is low? Is high? Is the highest percentage that we can get? Is increasing gradually or is decreasing? So that's the critical debate based on those studies, more or less in the same period. And we don't have any dates on information on that. So based on these studies, 3 different approach arrive. From De La Garza, the conclusion is the precarious Toyotism, which means 20, maximum 30% represents a failure of lean production. Not only that, no, there is no not improvement in terms of labor. So the second approach is the hybridization. The hybridization from the ABO and other colleagues from Japan mentioned that the lean is partially applied, but with some tensions between adoption and adaptation. And adaptation means to tropicalization to the context, and the adoption is based on could be, as I mentioned, based on bringing in machinery tools of expatriates from Japan, or to process from bottom to top by learning, right? So this is the hybridization approach. It's a kind of configuration in each sector and plants and regions. Of course, there are many differences between, in this project, as I mentioned, the 500 companies, there is a big difference between companies and sectors and countries. And the third approach is the upgrading. So if we are searching on manufactured plants, and then we move to, in the same area, the same sectors, to a more technical centers, the bringing in the regions, different tiers, the SMEs, institution, etc. So they coexist and create an important synergies that impact in some way by the lean production and improve the innovation ecosystem. But even though this approach of the upgrading, implementation of lean production involves a real important paradox. Meanwhile, you have a job enrichment, at the same time you have impoverishment of employment. And so that is a big tension, but it's not a technical issue. This is not related with specific practices of lean or with the whole lean production system, but is based on the labor model that exists in Mexico that we're not discussing in this paper, but the model is certainly very different than the other countries, especially with Europe, and is more protective to the companies. So conclusions. They have 3 slides of conclusions. The main idea from the previous analysis is the adoption of best practices has been the result of an evolutionary process of making the economic activity of companies, and mainly multinationals, more complex and competitive. Currently, there is a wide diffusion of these practices, even though the research in terms of based on surveys is relatively old. And I can safely say that the diffusion of this practice is following, is gradually implemented. So more and more companies are, and this is really a standard nowadays. And that includes not just some multinationals, but all the ecosystem. So the adoption of this practice is not necessarily systemic, as I mentioned, but partially. Second, the social labor situation in Mexico does not allow in the short and medium term to have a more complete adoption of the lean production model. And there is no counterbalance. And this is important because it's the same like 4.0. People have a lot of commitment, and they are so interested and could be understand the importance of these new technologies, the lean, and nowadays the 4.0. But if all of these new techniques and all of the implications for people that working in specific companies is not coming in some sense with better salary, better working condition, etc. So there is a problem because they are asking for be better worker, better at your work, at your workplace, but at the same time they feel that more and more we have a precarious situation in the companies. So in all interview is still the same. It's with quality, which especially with the lean production, with quality, I don't make a taco. So obstacles and disadvantages are relevant, languages, customs, and culture, I mean, based on different regions in Mexico, but substantive difference lies first in the dissatisfaction between innovation and social labor progress, that what I already mentioned that. And the second, the lack of human resources training and empowerment for workers to make fundamental decisions about work processes. So finally, the lean production will facilitate the entry of Industry 4.0. This is a conclusion of Helper a few years ago. And we interviewed some companies and we found the same. So the new technologies involve flexibility, talent, and commitment on the part of workers, but even more, 4.0 needs standardization. And lean is very, very strong, making more standards. So lean production in Mexico faces a new scenario nowadays. The first is the new government administration that is mainly, I mean, pressure from the US, but and also from some long trajectory in Mexico, but it's improving the labor and it's changing the model, and in that sense is raising wages, but slowly. And on the one hand, on the other hand, well, the technological disruption 4.0 technologies is centered in the global manufacturing. Of course, we need more studies on lean 4.0 and will begin to spread very soon. So thank you so much.